The heat is still on.
Massive game.
New Zealand to win.
Great kick.
It's been a terrible year for little Wallabies.
We're missing an injection of life.
Stupid guys think they're so good.
Hello and welcome to RuggaMatrix International. I'm your host, Juro Sen, and this is episode 238. And as always, I'm joined with my good friend, Ben Kimber. G'day, Ben.
Good evening, Mr. Sen. How are you?
Very, very good, mate. And we are looking forward to a great show. As usual, we are online with our friends out there on the internet and our friendly fans on Facebook. But Ben, as we always say, what is your strike issue of the week?
Well, first up, I want to apologise. I haven't got it to all the viewer comments from last week. I will get there. I do get there. Sometimes it takes me a little while, but I will get there. This week, though, I definitely want to talk more rugby. We've been talking a lot of issues lately. There's a lot of issues to discuss. This week, I want to get into the Super Rugby round that was. But before we do, I have to kick off. Maybe a little bit of a conspiracy theorist, mate. Maybe a little bit of that, that Trump supporter nutters coming out of me or something. But I just want to check out. I want to talk briefly about Australian rugby summits. We said a couple of weeks ago, there needs to be a summit.
A summit.
There needs to be some leadership in the country. There needs to be someone who draws everyone together and says, right, grab everyone by the scruff of the neck and say, let's fix this
I went to one of those, by the way.
You did?
And the Waratahs had their summit with Michael Foley.
Was that with the fans or just a Waratah summit?
Fans.
Because there was a fan summit, remember?
Yeah, and they served Berwick Barnes as a sacrificial lamb to explain.
He was a good fella.
Yeah, but he was injured. So anyway, go on.
So in summit terms in Australia,
Yep.
I'm just watching the news and the media and what the very little that comes out of RU headquarters and trying to work out what's going on. There's a bit of a bandwagon forming, I think. I think there's some bandwagon work going on. There's talk of, do we need an overarching summit to talk about Australian rugby top to bottom and its structure? And there's a bit of a push at the moment to say, no, let's just have a coaching summit. So let's focus only on a coaching summit. Now, we need to get coaching right, but I don't think you can lose track of the fact that the structure of Australian rugby needs to be fixed as well, right? There needs to be a lot more going on than just the coaches getting together. I'd love to see the coaches starting, but it'll be interesting to see if we can get the lot there. Now, a couple of things that I've seen in the press in the last couple of weeks. First one was Brett Harris in The Guardian. Now, Brett used to be the Australian's rugby writer. And actually, I thought he was when he was writing for the Oz, was one of the better readers of the game. A guy who actually, I think, was a good student of the game, and he could watch a match and he would have some good insight into what was going on. He wrote a piece and said, Australia needs to review the pathway for coaches. So rather than just having a coaching summit saying, what are we doing in training our guys, his focus was on the pathway. And he actually said in his piece, Brumbies coach Stephen Larkin, a key Wallabies playmaker in the McQueen era, recently acknowledged they had to start attacking more from turnover ball, but that insight may have come 10 years too late. It does feel like if Stephen Larkham's just saying this, having watched New Zealand for the last few years, we're a little bit behind the eight ball for the next Wallabies coach as he's been tagged. But Harris also did say the lack of depth isn't the problem. There's a lot of good players there. And I know that I saw on the WTF in Australia is wrong with Australian rugby Facebook group, a kid called Callum Lees or a bloke called Callum Lees wrote a piece looking at the numbers that are going out of Australia. And my feeling is I feel that the bit of the vibe lately has been, you know what? We actually aren't too bad off for players, but it is the way that we coach them and we treat them. Do you think that's a fair assessment, or do you think it's a lot more than that?
In relation to how the players...
And the depth. Do we have the depth?
Yeah, I don't think we have the depth, partly because, as we talked about before, and I was listening to our old show with Brett Papworth a couple of months ago, and it's really a good chance to listen to an expert in the field, and I just don't think we have the depth and the way that we... have to compete with rugby league in the first instance, because a lot of our great playmakers are there already. But I believe we have enough to be competitive and be number one in the world for the Wallabies, but to spread that further for Super Rugby talent, that's a different story. So I think there's two conversations here, Ben. There's a conversation about depth to compete as the Wallabies, and there's depth to compete in a bigger competition. And I don't think we have enough at the moment to compete as 5 teams in a Super Rugby competition that's pretty close to test level.
Yeah. Now, one of the reasons I probably started to think that it's more coaching as well is the force, right? I think they're doing better than anyone expected. They've had a couple of rough trots, but their coaching looks good under Vessels. And it looks like a guy who's been put in charge there who actually has some plan on how to bring the most out of the players. And they're throwing up different names. We'll talk about the games in a minute. A couple other guys I want to touch on who've spoken this week. I was really surprised. Phil Kearns came out, right, on the Kick and Chase show.
Oh, look out, here we go.
On the Kick and Chase show on Fox Sports. And he said, and this from a guy who's been, I think he's been on Fox for 15 years since he retired. He says, we haven't had good coaching in Australia for 15 to 20 years. He said, I think our coaching across the last 15 to 20 years has been really poor across the board, and that's where we're struggling. Struggling with skill sets of players, not only in catch and passing, but in the set piece. Big issues there. But he says we don't need a bigger summit. I found that very strange. Firstly, it was strange because Phil Kearns never really has ever criticised in the last 15 years anyone inside Australia. He's always firing shots across the ditch, but I've never seen him have a crack at anyone inside Australia, so that was a big change-up. But to jump on board and say, we need a coaching summit, and it's been bad for 15 to 20 years. Now, that's a big call, Giro. You were in rugby with the Wallabies within the last 15, 20 years.
Yeah, all right. So the first thing there is, Benny, that takes in a hell of a lot of coaches. So that takes in Rod McQueen, takes in the World Cup in 1999. You were there as well. It takes in Bob Dwyer, takes in Eddie Jones, and, a 5-year reign for the Bledisloe Cup. So they must have been lemon coaches. The players must have done it all themselves. I don't think so. I think it's just one of those nuff statements that just comes out at a time, and suddenly you've got to take an interest in what's happening because generally they don't.
Yeah. And that's what I meant when I said there's a bit of a bandwagon there. But this is where the ARU leadership needs to sort the bandwagon out. Everyone's saying that something needs to happen. What needs to happen? Show us the way.
Yeah, so that's the one thing I hate. At least someone like Brett Papworth, who I'd love to get back on the show, Ben, has solutions. And we're going to talk about it a bit later, but we touched on it before, and I know a mate of yours suggested about the
one
club
of our
rugby.
snouts. One of our snouts. The great Scotty, if we can call him that.
Yeah, the great Scotty. That the solution is in clubland. And it's funny how we talked about it a couple of weeks ago. Suddenly it's become a big story in the paper, etc. And I think the solution is there. But in terms of coaches, there are plenty of good coaches in Australia who have gone overseas. And the fact is that we've got a record in the past 20 years of performing. If we go back to a few other shows that I mentioned some time back, and that was, Benny, about the fact that after getting the jump on everyone else with Rob McQueen and the Brumbies and then the Wallabies on professionalism, everyone else has caught up. And as Pappy says, there's more of a generic way of coaching nowadays, and you just need something else to give you the edge. And we just don't have that at the moment. And we don't have the edge either in those elite players that can do the job.
I think you're right. I think a couple more points on that. You mentioned Brett Papworth. Here's another conspiracy theory. I reckon he's gone very quiet. You reckon he could pop up somewhere official? We're going to get him on and ask him, I reckon.
I think so. I think he's been left to hang out to dry by many people who ranted and raved on the edges. But when it came to aiming up with the ARU, they sort of said, you're on your own, mate. So I think Pappy deserves more support, but he has gone a bit quiet, yes.
Yes, and speaking of guys who know what they're saying, and I hate to say the Kiwis getting it right again, but on that same show, Kick and Chase, Andrew Mertens, who I think is quite an insightful commentator, he has a crack. He said words along the lines of, Australia used to be the guys who played heads-up rugby. He said now NZ are those guys who play heads-up on a framework, but they adapt. So basically, the Australian guys used to be the guys who could better play heads up, what's happening on the field, what have we got to do, let's get into it, adjust. And now we don't see that in Australian rugby. And you see it in NZ, and I think he's probably on the spot there too.
Yeah, and I think this is a lot of the New Zealand coaching, I've talked about this before, has something to do with that. It's running the team in a certain way that's taken that ability to think out of them. Now, that is not any way running down New Zealand coaching because it obviously works, but in Australia it doesn't. So Australians have got to get back on their backsides and start thinking about what they're playing, thinking what's in front of them as well as looking at what's in front of them and playing accordingly. And they're not doing it. Although I'm excited about some things the Reds are doing, we'll cover in a second. Yeah. But he's right about that. It really has changed. So not only is New Zealand smarter, they're more powerful and they're playing the game that's almost unstoppable. Yeah. So from the top down, by the way.
To that point, what I wanted to do was I wanted to briefly run through the games from Super Rugby Round 12. I want to actually I watched pretty much all of them. A couple of them I watched on fast forward or bits and pieces because finding the amount of hours can be hard. But I want to go through those, but also throwing ahead a couple of things we will talk about later. I'm bringing back CHEIKA WATCH. CHEIKA WATCH is coming back on the show later on to see what Michael Cheika's been up to.
We should get a little
And also,
for that.
I want to talk about the most controversial...
Can we get a sponsor for that?
I want to talk about the most controversial Lions incident of all time. Tell me what that is, guys. What's the most controversial Lions incident of all time heading into New Zealand?
There's been a video doing the rounds about all the rough stuff that Richie McCaw has copped. So, yes, some sensitivity. I'm I might raise the ire of a few of our Kiwi friends later on when we talk
you're used
about
to doing
Brian
that, mate.
O'Driscoll.
You're used to doing that.
Yeah.
Just a few notes on each game. I want to talk more about a couple of these
So
games.
that was your issue of the week?
Yeah, my issue of the week was conspiracy theory and what's going on with summits, right?
Yeah, well, could have done better.
Could have done better. Maybe I could have. Blues. The Blues smashed the Cheetahs 50-32. It looked tight early on. Blues kicked away. Cheetahs came back with a couple. Look, Akira Ioane looks very good. You've got to find a spot for him in the 23, I think, for the All Blacks. He's a young bloke, but Rico Ioane, I think you've got to find a spot in the 23. But his brother Akira, I think, is the guy who's playing himself into contention as well. Yeah. Both big, strong, fast, monster. Good handling players. And the last 3 wins for the Blues. I really think that there's been a bit more platform, clearly against some different sides, for those guys to run off. And when you give them half a sniff, they're away. And I was talking about Pulu. Pulu scored a good try off a Luatua break in that game. And I don't know if I mentioned this a couple of weeks back, but if you didn't see it, and I didn't see the commentators really call this out, but when the Blues played the Waratahs, Akira Ioane scored Ioane, actually, I'll correct myself, I've been corrected in the past by our Kiwi friends. Akira Ioane scored a great try off a smart piece of play from Pulu, where Pulu, on a loose ball, flicked it up with his foot, caught it, and put Akira away. And I just thought, that is a confidence play right there. And confidence is a theme I want to talk about tonight, confidence and energy. But anyway, the Blues...
You've certainly got plenty of that.
The Blues looking in good nick. Brumbies Lions. Now, the poor old Brums...
the Brumbies. Do we have to talk about the Brumbies?
We have to talk about each of these games. And look, they showed...
Sorry, can I just say, Ben, I went through the highlights for the weekend, and there weren't many. Across the board.
Well, I enjoyed some of the rugby on the weekend.
Right, so do you enjoy the Bulls Highlanders game?
I did not enjoy that one. And that one copped a lot of fast forwarding.
What's going on with the Bulls?
That one copped a lot of fast forwarding. We'll get there.
All right.
We'll get
there was no one there, by the way, either.
I know. I was going to say that, mate. I've never seen an emptier stadium than the Bulls Highlanders.
You could actually hear them talk. You could hear them breathing.
It was raining. The very definition.
You could hear them breathing over the rain and over the referee.
The very definition
also some
of fair weather fans.
Ridiculously soft decisions too. Yeah. In a tough game by the referees of the weekend. But anyway,
Mate, you're jumping ahead.
Yeah, I was just getting excited. All right, go for it.
Lions looked fit, energetic, and Lions kept their tempo up. They really got stuck in, but at least the Brumbies showed a solid defensive line. Start from one stuff up, which almost length of the field try, maybe 60 metres. The Brumbies looked all right. But the point is, Hawera is really a third-string New Zealand 5'8". He's got some good toe, but in terms of a general, the Brumbies aren't getting there. They're not scoring tries. They're not cracking it. Fardy had a massive game. He is a big loss. I'm still upset he's leaving Australian rugby, and the way that CHEIKA hasn't been right in his corner in the last year or so, it's unsurprising he is. Joe Powell, a couple of darts from number 9 there. Maybe a little defensively suspect. There's a few out there calling him Australia's leading number 9 candidate. Not so sure myself. Want to keep an eye on him. But in the end, the Lions just seemed smarter, and they snuffed out those Brums repeatedly at the breakdown with really intelligent poaching. So when you say a team looks smarter, again, Stephen Larkham's still got to grow as a coach, and I can't believe he's down to be the Wallabies' next coach.
Oh, yeah, according to...
CHEIKA. He's anointing his successor after having a terrible year last year.
So what's that, 6 losses?
Don't know.
For the Brumbies?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Well, Australian rugby is wide open. Anyone can make it into the finals.
I hope the Reds do.
Yeah, the Rebels.
Seriously,
the Rebels, the Tars, the Reds, and the Brumbies are all still capable of making it.
Well, when we get to the Reds, I'll explain why.
Crusaders Canes. Now, I talked last week about Beauden Barrett not having the pressure that Carter has previously, and why I thought Carter was better. I think we saw a bit of that. I think we saw the Crusaders put Barrett under that pressure, flat defensive line, and I don't think he played as well as he can. This is why I was saying Dan Carter. Plenty of chat around this game. People were saying test match intensity.
Mate, what?
You didn't like it, did you?
No. I'm just going to say it wasn't a revelation. There's a long way to go.
Well, I'm saying stuff and it's being proven. That's all I'm saying.
If you said he was a genius, as in Barrett, already better than Carter, yeah.
So if I was wrong, you say. Instead of I was right.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess we shouldn't even ask the question. It's pointless at this point in his career. But you're right. Not only him though, but the Hurricanes were under pressure.
Yeah,
absolutely. And that was borne out by the fact that we only saw one try with a rolling maul.
Crusaders. Well, what's wrong with New Zealand rugby? How boring was that?
It was tough though. It was that.
Yeah,
but
it was a good test match
at that
intensity.
level. It was great defensive work, and you know, you had to take points. I did like the fact that the Canes right on half time. They had a penalty in front. Went for the line out and they got turned over, but lost possession. But they had a go.
Well, mate, in hindsight, maybe they shouldn't have.
No. Well, they got the kick. They got another penalty anyway. Yeah. So it was a pretty good match, high intensity. I really did enjoy that aspect of it, and both teams will be better off it. But you got to say, like the Crusaders are just supreme at this point, and if they don't win it, it'll be a travesty, I reckon.
A lot of talk about it being test match intensity. I think the person to be most happy with that game would probably be our old mate Steve Hansen. I think he would look at that and go, that's what I want to see. And one of the reasons for that is because I think we saw the Crusaders of old. I think they've been building a bit this year. I told you I tipped them at the start of the year and then I went a bit cold on them, but they've come back and that game showed what the Crusaders used to be the best at, which was controlling a game. Now, some amazing stats out of it. That was the first time, and I got this from Richard Nola and stuff, the first time in 61 games the Hurricanes have not scored a try, stretching back to 2014 when they lost to the Sharks in Durban. And in the previous 9 games, they'd scored 63 tries, an average of 7 per game. So what an effort by the Crusaders defensive line. And one of the things that I found really interesting is this combination of the Hurricane style, that sharp, frenetic energy that we are going to punch at you from everywhere, that has translated a lot into the All Blacks with Barrett as 5'8", versus what I see as more a couple of years back All Blacks style of that relentless power and control, and we are just going to keep at you and push you. And that combo is surely what Steve Hansen wants in the All Blacks. Because the Crusaders, that pack, what an effort from that pack to just keep going, keep smashing. The scrum was enormous. Moody and Franks, of course, standing up and just putting it to some of their competitors. But the consistent way they kept that flat defensive line, and what a game from Ryan Crotty. Ryan Crotty said, I am your number 12, Steve Hansen, right there. There's guys out there who are playing good parts, different types of games. Lamalpi, showed a couple of times by running over Samu and Maunga that he's like got a bit of nonu about him in terms of power. But gee, Crotty played an all-round game, and I think he's going to get that 12 shot if he just keeps that together.
And I think that's the thing about the game band. Everyone sort of rose to the occasion because they were up against the best in the competition. That all New Zealand challenge was terrific. I think not with any. No one really brutalised each other in it, but it was just tough. It was just great to see.
And it showed also, mate, that crossfield kick has really come into play so much in the last couple of years, led by the likes of Barrett, really. Yeah,
but it had to in that game too, because there's no way through. I mean, they were so solid in defence both sides. And look, I don't want to see too much of it because it is a bit of a, it's a blight on rugby league because that cross kick is everywhere. However, what happens is though, and I talked about it before, is those rugby league wingers are now, I think, better than rugby wingers in terms of handling the cross kick and finishing on the sideline. If you don't believe me, have a look at the NRL this year because I know it could be controversial to say that, but I think generally as a group there are great rugby wingers, mostly out of New Zealand, but and there was a couple actually in South Africa. But just as an overall, thing I've picked up out of what's happening with wingers on the end, I think that's a good thing. Having said it again, I think that's what we should be doing with the Wallabies, kicking to Israel Folau on the wing.
Well, I think what it's a great example of is what we've been missing in Australian rugby is that real general who can pick the right time to do things. Like we've never said, just keep cross-kicking or just keep running the ball. The best 5'8" and the guys who control the game are the guys who pick the right times to do things. And I actually saw Moanga inside his own 22, chipped across field beautifully, and all of a sudden the Crusaders were on the attack up on the halfway line because just the timing was right. It was reading the field, knowing that the wingers are a bit out of position or a bit too close up or whatever it might be, and picking the time to do it. So we saw it a couple of times in that game, and I think even Ryan Crotty showed he got a bit more going on than we might have thought with one of those cross-field kicks. He was massive. Matt Todd, Romano was strong. And what about the depth in second rowers there at Crusaders?
Oh, yeah.
They, Romano, Whitelock out. They still had Romano and Barrett. Barrett injured for a couple of weeks now, I think 3. But in came this young bloke called Strange who really tore it up as well. So they've got must have a second rower farm somewhere that is plucking these blokes from.
Yeah, I know. But it's not just there either. Yeah. You just go all through New Zealand in the super teams and you'll find them all over the place. No, absolutely. So, just supreme game, wasn't it? And you know, it was tight, not many tries generally around the place. There were a few games that were a blowout, but mostly there was a lot of defence at the weekend that was pretty good. Some of it was due to errors, but you know, still exciting stuff.
Yeah. Final 2 points on that game.
Yep.
One was an extra special Crusaders effort because their two key leaders were out in both Reid and Whitelock, probably, you know, well, captain and second captain. But good news for the Canes, I read before we started the show, that Dane Coles and Milner Scudder may be back in contention this week, so that'll stiffen them up, I think, if they get those two boys back.
All right. Anything else on that?
No. Rebels Reds.
Rebels Reds.
Tight game. 24-29, right down the bell, and you know, for Australian rugby, you want to see a good hard tussle, and I think it was. There were times when it was just frenetic, though, like when these Australian sides try to play that game that the Hurricanes and the Chiefs bring more so than maybe the Crusaders, of up tempo, counter punching, and fast ball movement. There was a period there in the middle where it just looked like they were trying to do it, but it just felt too frenetic. It becomes like the ball's just flying around and they throw passes rather than construct a bit more, run the right lines off each other's shoulders. But it was good to see a couple of guys stand up. I think Karevi's having a massive year. He looks great. I'm really pleased to see him as captain as well. I'm going to talk about, after we go through the games, I'm going to talk about energy.
He scored the decisive try.
He did, and he's bringing energy, and you can see how much he loves it. And in talking after the games as captain, he's really into it. And I think Fox Sports put the mic on him in a game a couple of weeks back, and he was really revved up. And I wondered, you know, if you got the mic on you as a player, it has to change the way you talk, right? You think, geez, I'm mic'd up here, I better say something.
Yeah, it does.
He was revved up.
Yeah, but after a while, you forget about it.
Yeah,
like
probably.
a couple of minutes into it, you just like, oh, what's going on? That's how many people get caught out in documentaries, Benny. They think about the microphone for a couple of minutes and then they're suddenly in trouble because they forget all about it. There's a few programs I can remember about that. So what I liked about the Reds in particular was, they had some creative play, but their support play was outstanding. And I thought, you know, just on the half-time break there, they missed a couple of opportunities. They got turned over at the breakdown, and you see that quite a bit. That wasn't necessary. They should have really retained the ball because they did all the hard work. Yeah. Some beautiful interplay of forwards. And also Scott Higginbotham, after he had a bit of strife in the middle of Brisbane after a bit of nightlife got out of control. But Higgers, who's one of those abrasive players that Australia needs, like the Scott Fardies, it was playing really well. And you know, he had something like the try-scoring record for a forward. So, you know, that's incredible stuff. And so, the Reds, will they match it with the rest of the competition? I don't know about that. But they certainly did pull off a good win in the end. And as I said, so their play was pretty interesting and very inventive. So I like what Nick Stiles is doing there. He's a smart guy. And I think after talking to him about him initially getting involved with this show, like listening to a lot of stuff, what Ewan McKenzie in the old days and Les Kiss were talking about, I think I like Nick, and he's really trying to bring a lot of stuff into the Reds off the field as well. So, yeah, well done the Reds. I actually hope that they sneak in and represent this particular province or the pool in. They
can, mate. They can
in the finals, because I think they've got some more potential, and it'll be good reward for them coming back to just this inconsistency of Quade Cooper. That's the big issue, I think. Because when he's on fire with that long ball, he's fantastic. But it's just the odd stupid thing that he does that lets the team down. And you got to take that sometimes. But if he had that and the discipline he had in 2011 under Ewan McKenzie, then you know it'd be a different. I reckon it'd be a much different result for the Reds.
Yeah, and I thought Cooper was improved. I made a note on that. On the broadcast, they said he had a foot injury and he couldn't kick, and that was probably knocking him about a bit. Apart from his usual defensive lapses when he got run over a couple of times, I thought he was improved. A couple of other points out of this game. You know who really impressed me? And if you didn't see this game, go and have a look at the highlights and just keep an eye on the Rebels halfback who's in there while Scrivener's out. But Ben Meehan is his name. I thought he's got the best pass I've seen of a 9 this year in Australian rugby. Just beautiful, quick, sharp service right from the base of the ruck, and bang, it was gone. Both sides, I thought he looked very sharp. I thought he looked in and around the field. He had that real bulldog number 9 attitude. I liked the look of him. I want to keep more of an eye on him. The only issue he might have, he's got a man bun, and I'm worried there might be a touch of the
Careful here. What are you trying to say, mate?
O'Connor's about him.
Right.
The James O'Connors. I was a bit worried there might be a touch around that because I thought he looked like he might have a bit of an attitude going on. I thought, I hope he hasn't got too much of that self-important attitude coming out of him.
Box kicks too much.
And box kicks too much?
Yeah.
Well, check his pass out for me, Asok, and let me know, because I thought his pass was beautiful.
It's almost as good as Ben Robinson's pass.
Yeah, maybe.
Nick Stiles was great too.
The thing about Meehan, though, that made me also worry that, I hope they've got him in hand, is in the 65th minute, he stripped the ball off Karevi, did a great job, got up there in defence and ripped it straight out. But instead of then focusing on where the ball went and following up, he laughed in Karevi's face and was at Karevi, and the ball was still live. And I thought, mate, your job is not to tell him all about it. Right. Your job is to get the ball and go.
All right. Any more about that game?
Sean McMahon, happy to see him back.
Yeah.
What a player. He always looks like he plays 10 or 15 kilos above his weight. Smashed it up. Thought he was great. And really, really pleased to see him back. The only other thing I thought was the form lines have been pretty true. Local derbies for us have been tight. Getting kicked by the Kiwis.
Yeah, true. But there was a bit more. I know I was a big critic of the local derbies, but they were a bit looser this year. But it really doesn't mean much considering where they stand overall in the pool of Super Rugby. But I thought it was I thought it was really enjoyable a match actually. I thought there was some good stuff in it. And go the Reds.
One win away from the top of the Australian Conference.
Yeah. Well, I hope they do it. I really do, because I just think they're the way forward in a murky year for Australian rugby at Super Rugby. All right, next, Benny.
Bulls Highlanders, the less said the better. 17-10 in the wet.
That's enough.
And fair dinkum, if you didn't see the highlights of that, don't watch them, but see if you can get some freeze frames, because I have never seen a lower crowd, less people, out of Super Rugby game.
Oh, the winning try was fantastic, so if you get a chance to see that.
Fekatoa's run off a stolen line out, the Bulls would be filthy. Well done, the Highlanders. They've won a couple late in the last few weeks.
Yeah.
A couple of red cards in there that I thought were fair, but I was just shocked at the empty stand. Yeah. This is a team that won the title a few years back, the powerhouse, the Bulls, and nobody was there.
I thought the hit wasn't that bad. There was a...
Which one, the first one?
It was the second
Naholo?
one. Yeah.
Naholo's shoulder?
Yeah.
I thought he was going to hit him anyway, but I thought he went into it. I thought he put a bit into it, and I thought it was deserved because he could have run into him, but he actually put something into it.
All right, and there was another decision that was sort of pretty soft too.
Yeah, the shoulder into the ruck.
Yeah, but in another game, which is the game in Argentina. But anyway, so Highlands got away with it, but just the Bulls. What about the once mighty Bulls, where they put almost 100 points on the Reds a few years back, and that stadium was full and pumping. It's some of these crowds, as you talked about last week, just diabolical, and that one was just terrible. Mate, it used to be a fortress. It
is a real worry, and as we look at this competition now, and we see that as I said, 4 Australian teams all had terrible years. One of them's going to be in the finals. Yeah. If they get shellacked, it's going to look bad. But look, this is Sansa. New Zealand were part of this. New Zealand, South Africa, Australia, Argentina, they all put this together as a competition. This is the setup they decided. So reap what you sow. I don't want to see too many complaints about Australian team getting in. This is the way it works.
Yeah.
Not saying we're going to enjoy it if they get smacked.
Has said, "Come on, guys, nothing wrong with a man bun." Well, what I'm going to do, I'm going to try and get the man bun going at the back there. How would that go? I'd have to get a job in advertising because it'd be a good fit. All right, so Highlanders get away with it, but you just got to do that, don't you?
Yeah. 2 more games to talk about quickly. Jaguares. See it, Darren? There you go. Jaguares versus the Force, 16-6. You've got to say the Force look like the best coached team in Australian rugby right now. Dave Wessels has this team going. And I only saw
the score at half time?
I only saw bits and pieces. But they left a couple out in the park, the Force, though, right?
Yeah,
they had a couple of tries that they could or should have scored. But, mate, they travelled. They went to Argentina. They played a good, strong side in the Jaguares. And they came away with the result. And this is a team that's under the pump. That's been told they were shot. That's been distressed players. I was really impressed with that. And also, Vessels is bringing these guys out who are playing strong footy. Who be interested to see how many Cheika picks. But Billy Meeks at 12, Alex Newsom on the wing. Curtis Rona's done some reasonable things for a Bulldog. And Adam Coleman was great to see him back. Australia's second row stocks are looking pretty good, even with Will Skelton heading overseas.
But it was it's just one of those games. There wasn't much to look at in the first half, I thought, and there was a really soft interference penalty given too that denied the Force a try in the first moments of the second half. So I think technically, yes, he was blockading the chaser who was coming through. But just one of those decisions that frustrates the hell out of you as a rugby watcher. But yeah, no, well done. It was someone I can't remember who it was prior to the show said, "Hope we're going to wax lyrical about the mighty force win."
Yeah.
So anyway, you can't deny
see.
great win. You got to play who's in front of you. You got to play the conditions, and you're right. They're very well coached. But there are things about players who are willing to be coached of a certain level. Is one thing with a good sort of mechanical coach you can do that, but when you get to the top level and you're dealing with egos and X factor and stuff like that, totally different thing. That means like some junior coaches can't elevate themselves to the top. It's a bit like coaching Origin. You don't Craig Bellamy in rugby league, fantastic club coach, but had no idea how to coach at State of Origin. So that's the man management thing. So it's not as simple as that, and we could delve into that later on when we get some coaching minds in here in the studio.
Well, something just came to mind in terms of the coaching and what they'd be looking for.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great to see the Force didn't concede a try and the Brumbies playing the Lions, who have been, pretty rampant in some games, only conceded the one through their own error. Would you agree that Australian rugby has to defend its way back to parity? Do you know what I mean? It's got to start with defence, doesn't it? I mean, we haven't got 5'8" who are scoring great, who are setting up great tries and all that, but I think the integrity and the belief and the confidence is going to come back first and foremost through the defensive line.
Sorry, I'll just have to look. Sort of a low life, I think you used. Greg Parker has just commented, would KB be keen for the last two games like Dean Mumm did in 2015 Euros? And P.S. We love Ben Kimber. So I think he's actually drunk right now, Greg. So, but thanks very much for the question. That is a good question. Should KB come at the end of the season?
Thank you, Parks.
Yeah.
Love you too, buddy.
Roseville boy.
Last game was Kings Sharks, and this is really interesting. These teams that have had, the crosshairs on them all year, and you could understand if they frittered away because of the pressure or whatever, but conversely you'd think, well, maybe they're playing for contracts, or they should be playing for contracts, and saying, maybe the team will fold, but I got to get picked up, so I've got to show.
You become a stats man then.
But the Kings, they looked like a reasonable crowd came along, and they were so revved up and so into it. Their first, I think it was their first try, the fullback for the Sharks, Smith, ran the ball into touch inside the 22 and just put the ball on the ground.
I saw that.
Put the ball on the ground and ran off. And so the Kings, and this is where the eyes are on, right? And they're switched on. Kings grab the ball, quick line out, spread the ball, chip it across the field, and Alshon Bock on the wing, over he goes for a try, and they celebrated like they'd won the title. And I thought that team actually has some energy.
Yeah, they had a bit of passion, but wouldn't he have copped an absolute serve? Oh. He just placed the ball like he was over the try line. Here you go, son. Throw it in.
Not a good time for Smith.
But it was a good crowd. You could actually, you couldn't hear with the players on that field.
Yeah.
Like the noise was tremendous for the Kings game. No, it was good. You wouldn't know they were being in the punt.
And what a game that winger Bock had. The pace he has, fantastic. Scored another try just after half time from the kickoff. The halfback Schroeder cut through and put him away, and he just legged it. I thought he had a really impressive game, and I loved seeing a team so into it and so fired up. And if you could have a competition where all the teams were playing like that, you'd have a better competition, playing with that energy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Energy then. That was my theme from the round. When I went through and watched, and I saw different players and different styles, and it sort of coalesced in my head a bit when I was watching the Crusaders versus the Canes and thinking about their different styles. But you've got to love energy in a team, and you've got to love the way they play a game. Eddie Jones has always said, said last year that his key stat is not how fast they are or anything like that. It's how fast they get up off the ground when they're down and get back in the defensive line. That's his key stat. But the different types of energies guys bring to games, some of them have a real sort of frantic energy and a real dynamic style. And, you can see that in the Hurricanes play versus the guys who might be in a Crusaders style game who are much more focused and control and power than they are style. And I think you've got to mix that up in a team too. There's a few guys that sprung to mind over the weekend. Peter Sami for the Crusaders, I was watching him and I liked his energy and style. Perinara had a massive game, I thought, in a beaten side for the Canes and really pushing for that starting role. Laumapi, Spate, Sean McMahon, all these guys have a real high energy, high work rate and are bouncing around. But then you put those alongside guys, I think, in a team like the Matt Todds of the world, who I think is not a dynamic player, but is just on the money and in the right places. You know, if you pick Quade Cooper at 10, you know he's going to be flashy. You probably want a Reece Hodge at 12, who's going to give you a bit more of that power and direction and skill. So the takeout for me was really those styles of play which can be made up by the direction of the coach, but also by the players you pick. And it'll be interesting to see how much of that Hansen goes for in the Lions tour, but also for the Wallabies. What sort of a makeup through that back line in particular, I'm thinking, and probably in the back row as well, CHEIKA goes for from these guys who bring that high energy and dynamic play versus a little more solid control. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's all high energy, isn't it? And that's what that's what I see out of the Reds actually. So it is an interesting phase we're at, Benny.
It is, mate.
A couple of things there, and one of them was, why don't Australian rugby teams go for a rugby league coach? Now, that's not as strange as it sounds, because I think Australia really pioneered rugby league coaches, and John Muggleton as a defensive coach, and we've seen a lot of league coaches involved in that defensive regime. But to take over as the head coach in Australia, a bit more difficult. Brian Smith obviously involved with the Brumbies as well. So, but you know, it's maybe, I know the guys bounce ideas off them.
Yeah, look,
it's interesting.
I think you can definitely see a place for defensive coaches. People like, and then Les Kiss, great example, great defensive coach who then learnt more and more, or got into the game more and more and moved into more coaching ranks. But I think in general it's quite a different game structurally. I mean, the nature of the set of six in rugby league, and the very structured nature of the play.
A coach could. A rugby league coach, you know, they're very similar games in terms of how you carry the ball and stuff like that. But you know, there's obviously the differences, but there's a lot more in common than there are differences. And I think a league coach could do it. I actually like to see that, you know, in Australia. But you know, they love their own game, so there's nothing wrong with that.
It's actually a nice segue, mate, into CHEIKA Watch.
CHEIKA Watch.
CHEIKA Watch. Now, I'm in line with CHEIKA on this one. So CHEIKA came out last week, and he was...
Sorry, Artie just asked us about Crotty. We'd already covered him, so...
Oh, yeah, Artie.
Just go back... Artie, just go back in the show later on.
10 or 15 minutes
ago.
Yeah,
and I think we spent a few
Crotty had a cracker was the short answer.
Yeah, Crotty, we were pretty pumped.
Thanks. But Michael CHEIKA came out a week ago. So for those who aren't rugby league fans, one of Australia's best, Cooper Cronk, Melbourne Storm halfback, Queensland halfback, Australian halfback. One of the more professional players out there too, I would suggest. You know, always keeps his nose clean. Not having a crack at NRL players there at all, but always keeps out of trouble. And has a wonderful work ethic, and is a smart guy. And he's moving to Sydney because he's fallen in love with a girl from Fox Sports. Yeah. And you know, CHEIKA was asked the question, could he come to the Waratahs? And CHEIKA said, yeah, basically.
Green light.
Why not?
How long did that last though, Ben?
Lasted about a day before Andrew Hoare from the Waratahs ruled it out. And I saw
Cooper Cronk ruled it out.
He ruled it out too. Yeah, but what I mean is, Andrew Hoare, I think, before Cooper Cronk came out and said we're not interested. And I saw a column from Matt Burke, former Wallaby fullback Matt Burke, saying he couldn't understand it. And why would the Wallabies coach back the idea? I imagine some of my rugby-loving peers would see this as a kick in the guts. Do we really need to chase these blokes? Are we not producing anyone in the junior ranks that would be able to step up? No. That's why I would say, if you could get a guy like Cooper Cronk on 2 years to come in, and we barely have a player, a half in Australia with a good kicking game. This guy's got an amazing kicking game and a great passing game. And I say, if you could sign him for 2 years and bring him into someone like the Waratahs, where we haven't got guys coming through, we simply haven't. We've got Nick Phipps at number 9, who's been dropped to the bench this year. Jake Gordon's going okay. Bernard Foley's going okay. But I think if you could bring a guy in at that level for a couple of years at the age of 33, who could also be bringing you maybe some lessons on how to kick and control a game, I would not have a problem with it. I would have said, yep, go for Cronk. So I'm with CHEIKA on that one. What do you think?
Cooper Cronk, I'll go back to when we wanted to get Andrew Johns of the Waratahs. He would have filled the void perfectly for the task, just because of their expansive passing game. You got to look at what's missing in your team and what they can do. And I think, the Cooper Cronk's outstanding. Plus, he's a really smart guy. He could probably solve some issues. I remember talking to a lot of rugby players, like Nathan Gray, etc., when they'd always watch Origin, just about what they want to pick the part in the games in league, and then they'd sort of introduce a bits and pieces to rugby. So it's codes that can cross-pollinate and can help out, and I think there's something you can take from it. But yeah, look, initially, you know, the coaches jumping over and players like Cooper Cronk, I think he's happy to stay where he is because you know his career is going to be with Love in Sydney. And probably Fox Sports as well.
Just a couple of quick comments I've seen come
Yes,
through. James Smythe said, so get the league coaches to start at schoolboys up. Not a bad idea. I think, you know, the tackling skills that league brings, you know, definitely get that into the schoolboy ranks.
Sorry, can I just jump in, mate? Tina's made a great comment. If we're going to mention league coaches, why don't you hire the soccer coach for the Light Blues for kicking anything away? Mate,
yeah. Why not? Why not? The other comment I wanted to throw out was Ed Logue said, Ben, get back via defence. I made that comment to you saying, you know, can defence be the way back for the Wallabies or should be the way back for the Australian teams to get their pride and confidence? Ed says, a Foley-Beale 10-12 combo will require a big reshuffle in defence. And that's an excellent point, Ed, because last year we kept talking about the need for the Australian backline to shift to hide either Foley, they'd stick him at hooker, or Quade Cooper, they'd stick him at fullback or on the wing, and the constant moving would upset the rhythm, and guys not playing their position made it very hard. So great point, Ed.
Yeah, it did. So when you need to attack immediately on a turnover ball and change the situation, makes it really difficult. So you need to, sometimes you just need to actually tackle as well. Like this is where Stephen Larkham was such a genius. The guy tackled more than anyone else in the history of the game. He was unbelievable, and then can still attack and pass the ball 30, 40 metres. He's amazing.
And Lorcan O'Reilly mentioned Andy Frail, another league coach.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, let's move on from the league stuff.
Couple of final points in CHEIKA WATCH.
Yes,
CHEIKA WATCH.
We need a sting and a bit of a theme.
Yeah, we do. Now, I hope this is a negotiating tactic from Sean McMahon, but he's been linked to 2 years in Japan. Now he's only 22. He's, you know, and I think, you know, clearly with 40 minutes back is one of the form players in Australian rugby this year.
That's a real shame actually to hear that.
It is, but you've got to hope it's a negotiating tactic, right? Apparently he's not getting the offers. The report, I think, was the Australian said he's not getting the offers that he wants, you know, to be part of the Wallabies makeup. But if he goes, you've got to start asking what's going on with Michael Cheika's player management when you've got Skelton, Fardy, McMahon. Maybe he just doesn't like guys that can bend the line, you know? So, not too... Oh, and the other rumour, you know, is Folau to the Warriors, back to rugby league. See that one during the week? Well, he's in love. He's in love with a netball player over in New Zealand. So a move to New Zealand.
Cooper Cronk has succumbed to love.
That's it.
That's why he's heading to Sydney, and you know.
Yeah.
Does Sonny Bill say?
No. Oh no, you're thinking of Solomon Hamano back in the day.
No,
chased the pleasure machine overseas. That's right.
Oh, and who was the other All Black?
Byron Kelleher?
Yes.
Yeah, we won't dig into that one too deeply.
Love makes you do crazy things.
It does.
So, you know, who knows? Yeah, next. We'll start winding this up, Benny.
All right, a couple of things to cover.
I've got to leave at 4 in the morning.
Oh, okay, a couple of things to quickly cover. Mentioned at the top of the show, I want to talk about one of the most controversial incidents, because I think the guys in Kahu, the Kahu Facebook group asked us about this. I haven't commented, but I will. But there's been lots of noise this week about, you guessed it, most of you, I saw the comments, the 2005 first test, New Zealand, British and Irish Lions, first few minutes really even, Tana Umaga and Kevin Mialamu tackled Brian O'Driscoll and they put him out of the series, out of contention, the captain of the Lions in the opening minutes of the first test on tour. It went on for years and years. Umaga wrote about it in his book. Kevin Mialamu ran into O'Driscoll, you know, a few years down the track. O'Driscoll was angry years later, according to all these reports. This stuff's fascinating to bring up because you love the history of these Lions tours and you love the way it comes together. Now, my position on that is it did not look like a friendly tackle, our Kiwi friends. Can you imagine if you flipped it? Imagine if Richie McCaw had been taken out in the first few minutes of the first test of a Lions tour. There would have been hell to pay for centuries. So I think Brian O'Driscoll was rightly upset. I think the tackle was extremely dangerous. And the fact that they got, not saying it was deliberate, but it was definitely dangerous. And he got injured and was out. And I think that, you know, what was amazing though was the no sanction part of it. The fact that they got away with it. That wouldn't happen today. That would not happen today. They're much stricter on that kind of stuff.
Well, given what happened on the weekend, I mean, they're so quick to stamp on any sort of foul play. So Mialamu and Umaga were given a free pass afterwards, there should have been some sanction. And
should have.
Look, I agree that no one needs to carry on about it forever and a day, but on that day, I think the big issue was there was no sanction. It had to be. It just.
But I also think that can be tour changing.
Yeah.
Like that was their talismanic captain, one of the best players in the world at the time, right at the start, and you suck the heart out of a team like that. You know, the way you respond is everything, of course.
Yeah.
But that can make a big difference.
The other thing I've got to say is that obviously, we pride ourselves on being straight down the middle, and the commentary giving you right now is based on no sort of bias whatsoever. And if I'd refereed, I was a state touch referee actually at that I'd had to make some pretty horrific or controversial calls with people I knew, and I think in this case, there should have been some sort of penalty afterwards, and the fact that I didn't get any was a bit of a blight on the game, I thought, and but the carry on afterwards, TV specials on it from come on.
You know what I don't like too? I don't like it being brought up 12 years later.
No.
Well,
I think
it's formative for this tour.
I think it's because nothing happened afterwards. They didn't get any sanction.
It's also because media types like us would wheel it out, right? Because people talk about it, but I don't think it's not formative for how these two teams will face each other. I don't think.
It was really hard to get a replay too for some reason. Sorry, to you, Darren Ormsby. Look, Darren, he's just popped up on the feed saying
one of the best players in the world, please, mate. He was.
Yeah. Come on, mate. BOD, one of the best players.
He was fantastic.
And there's some great video of him schooling some All Blacks back in the day. But look, it's just going to come up. It's going to come up over and over. I don't think we'll mention any more than this tonight. That
I think
that's the reason is there was no sanction at the time. Tana Umunga and Kevin Milamo afterwards did come out and say, look, it was it was a shame someone got injured, but they should have been sanctioned after the game.
Yep.
That's where I'm going to leave it. They're all great men and great players, and just bring it on until the first minute of the first test. Look out.
Two things to close out, mate. I know you want to close us down. You've got an early day tomorrow.
Yep.
We didn't talk about the World Cup draw. I think we'll dig into that at another stage.
You've got a question. What do you think about it?
Look, for Australia, not too bad. I think, the thing I found really interesting was when you look at the tiers that they had, tier 1, 2, 3, to pick teams from, there was strength down into the third tier. There was still strength. There's still strength to come in. So I think it's you're always going to get pools of death when World Rugby is getting better. New Zealand kicked out in front, but as we said, we had a good year of international rugby last year. A lot of teams lifted their games, and there aren't super easy games. That said, I think CHEIKA would be kind of happy. Wales, they've had the wood on for a long time, and yet to see who's also in the group. But I think he'll be happy with that. But you never know.
Yeah, you never know.
But let's dig into it in more depth another time.
Sometimes they might play against Australia. If they have easier games, I don't think they're all going to be that easy, but just toughen you up getting into the quarters. You just want, so when you suddenly hit sudden death, you don't want to be hit by a brick wall and all of a sudden you weren't prepared for it.
Yep.
And that could be the issue for Australia. And they need to start refining. He needs to pick his goddamn team and get it sorted very early this year, Yep. That's what he needs to do, because we never saw his team picked. And that was a frustrating thing, It just gets me wild and fired up that he can't, settle on that side that's going to do the job. And when you do, you build a defence around it. People get used to playing with each other. They get used to playing each other with attack. So I think CHEIKA's got to decide on that team and make sure it's sorted well in advance of 2019.
Absolutely.
Rant over.
Final point from me,
Yep.
and it was, I said, my mate Scotty called me up and he said
Scotty.
He went for a walk on the beach last week. He was thinking about what we said in the show about we've got to get our love for rugby back because Australian rugby's been challenging. And he said, get down to club rugby, and he's right. You and I enjoyed that game at Coogee Oval. He went to Manly Oval last weekend. I'll be down at North Sydney Oval this weekend. Cam Shepherd, one of our mates, hosting Channel 7's coverage down there. Ladies' Day at North Sydney Oval. Australian people, get out and about, get to your club rugby, support the teams. Yeah, absolutely. We said that it is the start for the revolution, and it's interesting to see a good story in the Telegraph too about the rise of club rugby, and it's been a great job to get it on free to wear, 7/2 every Saturday afternoon, 3 o'clock. Don't miss it. Benny, I've got a little email here on the site that I haven't shown you yet, but I just thought I'd read it out because it's not a bad one. So I'm going to try and switch and read this at the same time. Okay. It might be difficult, but here it comes through from, I won't say the name until the end of it,
But here we go. I'll give us on the wide shot. I enjoy your shows very much. I'm a fan. Come very lately to rugby, having had no opportunity to watch or have contact with the sport until a granddaughter began playing club rugby a couple of years ago. Females who grew up on cattle ranches in Kansas, rarely I know much about rugby. I watched some, so you got an idea of where it's from. I watched some very well actually, and great many videos, researched the laws and strategies in an attempt to understand the game. She's looking at a lot of stuff here. I regret that I lost 72 years of not watching rugby at every opportunity. I would have enjoyed playing it myself. It's an amazing game. Skill, physicality, endurance and mental toughness all on display. And I suppose that part of the appeal is that something like the days of handling range cattle and half-tamed horses was all about. Last November, I took my granddaughter and her college rugby player, boyfriend, to Chicago to watch the All Blacks Island game and drove 9 hours back to New York in time to play pipe organ for my church job next morning. 2 hours of sleep did not improve my performance, but it was worth it. Having found your show on YouTube, I greatly appreciate it, and the keen and unbiased analysis that you and Ben Kimber provide of the games, the players and the coaches. I've learned so much from you, and that is from Edith Davey from the United States. So Edith, 72 years young, thanks for emailing in, but I thought I'd just spring that one on you. And sorry, I was trying to read that and press some buttons at the same time. But yeah,
very nice, mate.
How good's that? So the game touches people from all over the world, and you know it's fantastic. So you told me you're going to do a blog post, mate.
Yeah, I saw Lewis and Tina saying the same thing. I will. Duro set it up. I will start posting.
Yeah, no excuse.
No excuses.
So what are you going to cover?
Everything.
Everything?
I got a great shot I took at a Waratahs game I'm going to post. It was really interesting. I'll put that one up there.
Oh, just a photo.
Yeah,
right.
yeah, but it's an interesting one.
Yeah. All right, so everyone's saying, good on you, Edith. Fantastic stuff. Yeah, it was a great little post.
If you're still there, guys, give us a thumbs up before we go. Make sure you give us your comments, questions, shares. Love it. Apologies I didn't get to them this week. I will next week.
Down the barrel, mate. Give us a message.
Comment, share, all that kind of stuff, guys. I said I'll be there this week.
All right. Okay. Thanks very much, guys, for tuning into our late show. Hit the road early in the morning. We'll be back next week at the usual time. And then down the track, we might settle into another night. We'll talk about that later on. But we're getting closer to the lines. Can't wait. Can't wait.
Awesome.
And getting closer to work out who's going to fall over the line and get into the Super Rugby province from Australia.
Mate, I'd pay good money to see them knock over a team or two and they get through too.
All right, thanks, mate. All right. Thanks for joining us on RuggaMatrix International. Hope you enjoyed the show, and I hope you enjoyed the live program. Don't forget, if you're on YouTube, you can join us on Facebook every Monday night, 8:30 Australian Eastern Standard Time. Until next week, enjoy your rugby.
The heat is still on.
Massive game.
New Zealand are winning.
Great kick.
It's been a terrible year for little Wallabies.
You're missing an injection of life.
Stupid guys think they're so good.